Today, I'm really excited about a special guest that we're going to have a conversation with. He is a man who is passionate about cultural diversity, passionate about promoting Africans, about the diaspora. He is a man with a vision. He's the founder of the Africa Diaspora Nation, and he does a lot of work for Africans, for the African diaspora, and is passionate about doing things that brings us together as a people, uplifts us as a people. He's in the tech spaces, he's an engineer, he is an overall leader making an impact for Africa and beyond. I'm really excited that he took the time out of his day, out of his busy schedule while he's in Ghana, to sit down with me and have a conversation about his life, his career, his journey. Because at the end of the day, it's about where you started and about where you're going, bringing it all together and a complete full circle. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation with him today, learning more about what he's doing here on the ground for the youth of this country and beyond. So I'm really excited to introduce Kwabena Boateng today to sit down and have this great conversation.
So good to see you, Ivy.
You too.
I've been following your great work.
Thank you.
And didn't imagine that I will be connecting with you in this context this soon.
I know about your journey, but people watching may not know much about who you are. So I want to first start by you telling us who you are right now, like your title, your role, what exactly you do right now before we dive into your journey.
All right, my name is Kwabena Boateng. I'm founder and president of African Diaspora Nation. We call ourselves a pan-human sustainable development organization that prioritizes human capital development and transnational leadership development. I have just recently transitioned from a role as head of system safety and trust within Amazon's robotics and fulfillment technologies division. Just today, I have been appointed to the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee of the IEEE Computer Society worldwide. I'm excited about that.
Congratulations.
And, thank you very much. And besides that, I'm chair of the HBCU Africa Homecoming Initiative, a platform established to facilitate exchange, research partnerships, and generally opportunity exchange between historically Black colleges and universities, students, faculty, administrators, and their counterparts on the African continent.
You know, that's really, really interesting because people on the African continent are not always familiar with HBCUs. And for those watching that don't know, HBCUs are historically Black colleges and universities. And those schools had to start initially because Black people were not given opportunities to attend universities and colleges. But a lot of Africans who go to the US, they don't choose those schools. And some of them don't even know about the schools.
That's right.
Last year, I had met some young people. There was a conference in Ghana that had some HBCUs come and they were doing some recruiting. And there was a Ghanaian student who told me he never even heard of what is an HBCU. So when he heard about this, he was like, what? There's schools that are mostly Black people that go to. So for him, he said he thought it was an opportunity to go to the US and have like a soft landing, to be surrounded by people who look like you. And it's not as a shocking and jarring experience.
Fantastic. And that's exactly why the HBCU Africa Homecoming Initiative, right? Mm-hmm. It was about exchanging stories, talking about the relevance of HBCUs to Africa's development. Mm-hmm. Because truth be told, all about 6 African presidents, founding presidents of different African countries, including Ghana, were products of historically Black colleges and universities, right? But HBCUs have had so many challenges that for a long time, they have been inward-looking, US-focused. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, the story of HBCUs is a story of global impact, a story of training and nurturing a generation of leaders who have gone on to be liberation leaders for their countries. We can talk about Kwame Nkrumah. Before him, we can talk about James Iman Kwejiagri, the first Gold Coaster I know to have attended an HBCU, who attended Lincoln University in Salisbury, North Carolina, and was a mentor to Kwame Nkrumah and Nnamdi Azikiwe, first president of Nigeria.
Oh, really?
And one of the founders of Achimota School. And by coincidence, I was in Agri House in Achimota School. So these are all HBCU products.
Yeah.
Kwame Nkrumah, Hastings Banda, Arika Nashi Homborikwa, an HBCU product, right? So HBCUs have produced the biggest number of engineers, the biggest number of doctors. They've really punched above their weight in terms of resources, comparing resources to impact. You know, I consider my HBCU experience to be part of the most transformative influences on my life.
Which HBCU did you attend?
So I attended Florida A&M University, the home of the Rattlers.
When I think of them, I think about their marching band.
Yes, the Marching 100.
Yeah.
Fantastic. World class.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So let's backtrack now. You know, we've heard a bit about, you know, what you do now. And
one thing I forgot to add is that I am a trained electrical engineer.
Okay.
All right. So I have a background in hardcore electrical engineering and decades of experience in instrumentation, automation, process control, and now robotics.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We can use more electrical engineers here in Ghana.
Hey, we need them.
So you were born in Ghana.
Yes, I was.
And you did all your schooling here. In Ghana, it's a very big deal as to what school you went to. Tell us a little bit about your experience in elementary school, in secondary school, which schools you went to.
All right. So in Ghana, my first exposure to schooling was the VRE International Schools. So my dad worked for VRE, so I had the privilege to attend Akosombo.
For those who don't know, VRA is
the Volta River Authority, the nation's primary utility company from a generation and transmission perspective for a very long time. So I attended VRE schools, Akuse Grade School for elementary. Then I attended Akosombo International School. And, you know, living in Akuse and Akosombo, small laid-back towns, usually an expatriate mix of residents back then, was a fantastic experience. And one thing that stands out from that experience is the motto of the institution.
What's the motto?
It is truth. It's our light.
Truth is our light.
Truth is our light. So it was there that I began a very interesting relationship with truth and light.
Okay.
Right. So one thing about me in retrospect, I've always cared about the mottos of the institutions I've attended. And I have a saying that some people went to some schools and they passed through the schools, but the schools didn't pass through them, right? Going to Akosombo International School, that motto of truth is our light, for me was something that permeated my being. So I care a lot about truth. I care a lot about my choice of words, what I say, and its impact. Then from Akosombo International School, after completing the junior secondary education over there, I went to Achimota School, formerly the Prince of Wales College.
I didn't even know it was called Prince of Wales College. I just know of the Achimota school name.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the University of Ghana started. The institution started to train leaders for Africa. And, you know, we had, you know, some great historical figures. Agri's partnership in founding the institution and its subsequent impact. Kwame Nkrumah, Mugabe of Zimbabwe, the said Auda Jawara
attended Achimota.
They all attended Achimota School, right? Hilda Adifarasi of Nigeria, right? So Achimota School, ethos of producing leaders who become living waters to a thirsty land. And its motto of ut omnes unum sint, that all may be one. Black keys and white keys representing diversity and inclusion. See, Agri had a famous saying that you can play a tune of sorts with just the black keys of a piano, or a tune of sorts with the white keys of a piano. But to really have symphony and impact, you needed to use both.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was the beginning of another dimension of appreciation for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those white keys can represent different things, can represent race.
Mm-hmm.
Those black keys can represent different things that are other to one race. They can represent different viewpoints. They can represent tribes. So I believe that that foundation has been instrumental to creating a community of people in Ghana who respect each other, irrespective of tribe, nationality, gender, and all that. And that's Achimota's contribution and legacy in Ghana, if you ask me.
It's definitely a legacy.
Yeah.
But I may argue that recently Achimota had some challenges with respect to the young guy who had the dreadlocks, and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to admit him because of the hair.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people had their especially the diaspora, the
Mm-hmm.
viewpoint of Achimota wasn't very high
Mm-hmm.
when that happened. I don't know if you know that story.
Yeah, I know that story, and it is a story of every institution. It is a journey in aspiring to be its highest self.
Mhm.
And I think that's the story of all institutions. They learn, they evolve, they are encountered with challenges, and they adapt
Mhm.
and grow, right? So that's the context within which I see it. I don't place Achimota on a pedestal of being
Right.
all it can be. Neither do I place myself on the pedestal of being all I can be. I believe that it's always a paradigm of continuous growth, continuous development, and it goes for students, it goes for administrators, it goes for the board of Achimota School, it goes for our country, our continent, right? So I don't take that as a hit
Mhm.
on Achimota School. I take it as a necessary part of any journey
Okay.
in development.
Okay. So once leaving Achimota School, when did you end up going to the US? Like, why did you decide to go to the US? We often hear about Africans wanting to escape Africa
Mm-hmm.
for greener pastures.
Mm-hmm.
What was your drive for leaving Ghana?
Yeah, so I graduated high school in 1996, did very well, was admitted to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology to study electrical engineering. But that was in 98.
Mm-hmm.
I had been delayed for 2 years, or a year and a few months under 2 years at home due to university professors being on strike.
Oh,
Right. Yes, so there was a big strike action which kind of disrupted the academic calendar in Ghana
Mhm.
back then. And that left a very sad taste in my mouth.
I can imagine.
And, 2 months before I was scheduled to go to tech, I had the opportunity to leave so that I wasn't held back by the uncertainty in educational calendars due to dissatisfied lecturers and all that. So that is what prompted me going to Florida A&M University. And it wasn't like a very calculated thing. I went there because my brothers were there. I didn't spend a lot of time researching to go.
Okay.
I went there because my brothers were there, and it happened to be an HBCU. I didn't even know about HBCUs back then.
So you didn't know at
I
the time
I
either.
didn't know about that time, right?
Yeah.
So, people will say chance, but now I know it's divine orchestration. That's how I see it.
Mhm.
I don't believe that there's any chance, coincidence, when it comes to my life, which I believe is subjected to divine order, right? So there's no chance, coincidence. I ended up in that place. The dots connected in retrospect, and I loved that experience.
So tell me about once you were there. That's where you ended up studying electrical engineering,
Yes.
right? And so that was a 4-year program. You get through that. You decide to stay in America and not come to Ghana at that time.
Mhm.
What was it like transitioning in your life, and just kind of as a Black African young man, because you lived in Ghana, where there wasn't that concept of black and white. I mean, people see white people coming to Ghana and all that, but it's not the way it is in the US, where there's the definite dynamic of the racism, discrimination that people experience. Did you find that you experienced things that made you open your eyes and say, wow, this is what it's like here in America, and I didn't expect that?
Many. So by the time it was, I had to go to the United States for college. If I were to paint the profile of who I was back then in terms of mindset and all that, I was this audacious Scripture Union. Audacious is fired up. Scripture Union, member of the Scripture Union.
Scripture Union? What's a Scripture Union?
Scripture Union is it's a Christian organization that was in a whole bunch of high schools, universities, and all that, and it was about Bible studies, fellowship, memorizing scripture, and all that. So I was very much immersed in that whilst I was in Ghana. So when I talk about being a Bible quoting, pew jumping, Holy Ghost fired type of personality, that's who I was. Very conservative minded. So taking that persona, right, and dropping him in America. I hadn't even had girlfriends or anything in high school or anything, right? Dropping me in America, different environment, more liberal environment, plus the college dimension to it. It was something else. I mean, I hadn't grown up in Ghana seeing even couples kissing.
Right, because public affection isn't a common thing in Ghana. Even today, it's not a common thing like in the US. And
so going into that institution and seeing that as normal in the university environment and all that, I even remember having a visceral, physical reaction to what is right. It was a pretty huge, steep adjustment. Even learning how to order at Burger King was an overwhelming experience.
And it sounds so basic.
Ordering at Burger King was an overwhelming experience. I'd grown up in Ghana. I was used to being offered, this is what is available, this is your portion, eat it, right? I didn't grow up in Accra, right? So going to the United States, I remember my first attempt to order Burger King. I was like, what are all these options on this board? Confusing, cognitive overload, right? So all those were interesting experiences that were part of the adjustment. Then of course the style of teaching, language, and you also need to remember that I believe that for a long time, whether deliberately or inadvertently, the media had painted a picture to Africans and vice versa with people of African descent in the United States, which essentially made us look upon each other with distrust. There was obvious division, right? So I had those sensibilities and I had to work my way through them because I was immersed and experiencing the culture and having friends. So at some point, I actually hungered for an opportunity to let my friends, African-American friends at the HBCU, come to Ghana and experience my culture over here, and vice versa, my friends over here coming to the United States and experiencing the HBCU culture. So I started dreaming about being a bridge builder, being an instrument of reconciliation, of truth, of reconciliation, and by building that bridge, now building on top of that. And it's interesting that eventually that is what the Year of Return has produced, but that was all part of the journey.
So I want to know, what are some of the distinctive things that you notice culturally between being an African, a Ghanaian, and then the African Americans when you like during your first year there? I'm sure that's when you had the most moments of, oh my goodness, wow, this is that. You know, I think about, I'll give an example. I think about, I read an article from a Canadian, she's Somalian, moved from Somalia to Canada, and she wrote this article saying, I didn't know I was Black until I moved to Canada, because growing up in Somalia, people aren't saying you're Black, but then you come to Canada and boom, you're a Black woman. What were some of the things that you noticed, that you experienced, let's say in your first year?
Yeah, I mean, it was being in class I was probably the only African student in the class, and introducing ourselves and people asking me, how do you get to Ghana? And questions about whether we lived on trees and all that, right? So that is something a whole bunch of us as Africans experience. They ask you how you go there, and sometimes we sarcastic, we say go to Miami and keep driving south. Back then we were like, we live on trees, and when back then Bill Clinton visited Ghana, we gave him the biggest tree to live on, right? So there was this ignorance about each other, and that was a very stark difference. And even amidst that othering of each other and the distrust, which I believe was largely engineered by how we saw ourselves through media, there was still this thing about Africans are smart, Africans are intelligent, right? And one funny experience was the fact that I was sitting in a class with people and they were talking about me. It was a group of young African American ladies talking about me in front of them, like I wasn't there. and that was interesting, right? So those were some of the experiences. I had never dated before, so from a dating perspective, cultural perspective, it was a huge adjustment. Actually, a leap I never took till even after graduating from college.
What were some of the things that were shocking for you?
It was, back then, as I said, I was very religious, conservative, and all that, right? So being in a relationship and not getting physical, or having a friend and not getting physical, and eventual frustrations like, I don't want to be in a long distance. You hear about you like in a long distance relationship and all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm not saying everybody there did that, but college is a place where a lot of people explored that sexuality and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's one dimension. Besides that, it was from a Ghana perspective. I had been in boarding school for a while. So I never processed the fact that I was really leaving home for good, right?
Oh, okay.
I never processed that fact that, hey, there's not like boarding school where you go for 3 months and you come back home, or 4 months and go back home. This was essentially a separation.
Right.
So that was something I also had to deal with. But all in all, in retrospect, fantastic growth experience. A place which challenged my assumptions of what was normal, what was traditional, different perspectives. And I say it was all for good. The opportunities to serve, right, in different organizations. I was a chaplain. I gravitated naturally to the role of a chaplain, anything spiritual.
Okay.
So I was chaplain of the National Society of Black Engineers chapter, the Florida ETA chapter, when I was in the Florida A&M University chapter when I was in college. I was on the campus ministry board. I was in Tau Beta Pi, the Engineering Honor Society, which you had to be in the top 10% of the class and all that. So I served in different roles when I was in college, and all made for a good experience.
And now, so once you finished college and you started to get into the workforce, you've had a diverse career experiences because you worked in the oil and gas industry with Chevron before going to Amazon. Am I correct, from Chevron to Amazon, or you had something in between there that I didn't
Yeah, I did some consulting in between, some nonprofit work in between. But yes, from Florida A&M University, I had some internships when I was in college with Kimberly-Clark Corporation. That's how I got into instrumentation automation. So Kimberly-Clark Corporation, they do all these span-bond material for surgical gowns, diapers,
tissues and stuff too.
Yep,
Yeah.
diapers,
I know somebody
paper.
who worked at the Kimberly-Clark in Canada.
Yep,
Yeah.
they definitely do. So diapers, the lady stuff, all manner of span bond material, even paper, tissue and all that. So that's why I got into the practical aspects of instrumentation, of electrical controls, automation, all that. From Kimberly-Clark, graduated, got an offer from Chevron Corporation, and I went to work. My first job location was New Orleans, Louisiana.
How was that?
It was all about great food, gumbo, Mardi Gras, another great experience.
That's a cultural hotspot
Yes,
as well.
cultural hotspot. But also, amidst all that, there was also working with different types of people. Some who had never left that environment, some who only knew that environment. So I realized that there was a lot of ignorance at some point too. And I worked in a place called Plaquemines Parish. And there had been a racist history over there where Black people were not even allowed in that place. As at like even 20 years prior to me going there.
Wow.
Right. So I started learning a lot about Black, besides college, Black experience in different parts of the United States. In this case, Louisiana, the West Bank.
The West Bank.
Of the New Orleans area.
And which years were you there?
So I was there from 2002 to 2007.
Right.
I was in New Orleans for 5 years, and I worked in a chemical plant. And over there, I also was on the diversity, equity, inclusion committee. And I started some graduate work at Tulane University when I was over there. And I actually met the CEO of the Ghana Tourism Authority now, Kwesi Agyemang, and a few others in New Orleans back then.
Wow.
Interestingly.
Wow, that's very interesting how the connections are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that means the years you were there, you also experienced Katrina.
Yes.
That must have been a very life-changing experience.
Very much so. Very much so. I was there when Katrina hit. I lived in New Orleans. I'm not saying I didn't evacuate, but I was there when Katrina hit. My apartment was destroyed. I was there with quite a number of Ghanaian students. Even I evacuated with some Ghanaian students. None of us returned to our places of abode. Flooded, totally submerged in water. In the case of New Orleans East, evacuated to Austin. But I came back about 2 weeks later as part of the recovery team.
Okay.
So lived in my office for about 2 weeks till the company I work with, Chevron, built a camp. It was called Camp Oronite. So lived in a trailer with my boss. It was a very unusual time. Living in a trailer with my boss, but that was what conditions necessitated. There was no infrastructure, power, water, food. It was a surreal experience.
That must be very character building.
Yes, and a whole bunch of my friends never came back. Right, so it became pretty lonely in New Orleans. And
why did you stay?
Why did I stay? I was employed. I was on H-1 visa.
Okay.
Right, so my presence in the United States was tied to my employer.
Right.
Back then.
Okay,
so I had to stay there. And Chevron being a global corporation, within a year and a half after that, I was able to find a role in Houston, working in Chevron's energy technology company as a process control engineer. That's when I got into standards and guidelines development, consulting on mega projects across different countries in the upstream major capital project segment, and R&D type work, which was very enjoyable.
So with expanding to other countries, did you have roles in any other countries outside of the United States?
Yeah, I worked in Angola, the province of Kwabena.
Wow.
Yes, I worked on the Kwabena gas plant project. I was the site distributed control systems commissioning engineer. So did that on and off for about 6 months. Interesting thing about Kwabena, it's a port city, which you find in history, was a place where slaves also departed Africa. I've also worked in Nigeria.
How was that?
Nigeria was fantastic and very, very eye-opening. The most, probably the biggest contributor to global operations, my global operations acumen. In Nigeria, I worked on the Escravos gas to liquids project.
Hello, greetings, Akosia, Kobe, and Nana, and of course my dear wife, Mommy, Nana, Papa. This is Daddy, reaching you all from the swamps of Nigeria. This is called the Olero Creek.
Nigeria was flaring a lot of gas as part of the oil and gas production. Flaring a lot of gas, just taking the crude and flaring the gas.
What do you mean flaring the gas? What do you mean?
Just burning it into the atmosphere.
Like
right?
You would burn gas into the air?
Yep.
Is that normal? Is that what they do?
That's what was being done for a long time.
Why?
Because they didn't have a way to convert. They didn't want to do the investments to convert that gas, to add value to the gas. They were more interested in the crude. All right? And you cannot get the crude without the gas coming out. So that happened. Oil and gas industry across the world.
I didn't know that.
For a long time, the gas was being flared. Today, that gas is being trapped and transported via pipelines, processed. In the case of Nigeria, they actually bring the gas. They transport it to Ghana. Some gas to Ghana through the West African Gas Pipeline Project. So I was in the place in Escravos where all this gas was coming from. Challenging operational environment. But I was in Nigeria for a total of about 7 years. 3 years on the Escravos Gas Liquids Project, and another 3 years as the Instrumentation, Automation, and Electrical Projects and Designs Team Lead for the Nigeria Mid-Africa Business Unit of Chevron.
That's great.
Yeah, fantastic experiences. And
Imagine.
one commonality is that these places in Africa where I went to, which had now become hubs for the export of energy, because that's what crude oil is, energy to power the world, right? All those places also used to be slave export hubs. So you could see the history of transporting, enslaving people and transporting human energy to power economies in different parts of the world. And the parallel between that and the present, which sees the export of crude oil, gas from those same spots. The energy business, transitioning from human beings to crude. Interesting observation, I think. Yeah.
So now you were there for 7 years. When did you leave Nigeria?
I left Nigeria in 2016.
So from there you went back to the US?
Yes, went back to the US, went to Atlanta. I had started harboring this desire to fulfill this long passion I had of bridging Africa and its diaspora. Atlanta was known as the Black Mecca.
Yeah, a lot of Black people go there.
Yeah. So I was like, which other place to be to do work on something like that than Atlanta? So I was in Atlanta for a while. kicked off African Diaspora Nation in Nigeria whilst I was working for Chevron.
So you launched it while you were in Nigeria?
Yes, launched it in Nigeria.
Really?
When
That's interesting.
I was there.
What made you decide to launch it while you were there?
Because I got attuned to the challenges of Africa. Before it was conceptual, but when I came back to Africa as an adult, graduating from college, working and all that, I saw the huge disparities. I saw the challenges, whether it was education, whether it was building the entrepreneurial capacity of the youth. Mm-hmm. I saw the huge disparities, and I went back to the earlier thought that if we can bridge Africa and its diaspora, it will be a great platform, a great convenient platform to innovate and solve Africa's problems. If you look in history, the diaspora has always been instrumental, right? It's a historical fact, right? But it takes the appreciation of reality that people who stay provide, as well as the diaspora's experience, all within a paradigm of respect for each other's dignity to address Africa's problems, right? So that's why I launched African Diaspora Nation, because I thought that was a great place to pilot the ideas which I had been harboring for a long time. So Atlanta was all about, hey, I have this vision, it involves Africa and its diaspora. I'm in Nigeria. I kicked off in Nigeria, the most populous Black nation in the world. If you're bridging on the US side, I was like, let me go to the Black Mecca, right? So I found my way to Atlanta. Interestingly, it was the first city I really spent time in when I first got to America. I flew into Atlanta, and my brother picked me up from Atlanta to take me to Tallahassee, Florida, where I went to college. So I had fond memories of Atlanta. So in Atlanta, I dedicated I stayed in Atlanta for about 3.5 years, totally dedicating a good part of my time, besides my consulting engagements, a good part of my time towards fulfilling this passion of African Diaspora Nation. When I moved to Atlanta in 2016, the following year was the Ghana Diaspora Homecoming Summit. It was also right in the middle of the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent. And African Diaspora Nation's first activity in Atlanta was to raise awareness, the media launch for the International Decade for People of African Descent. Then from there, the connection started expanding. I met a very great American, Ambassador Battle, who is now the US Ambassador to Tanzania. He was the keynote speaker at the launch of the event, very encouraging. So we did the launch at Morehouse College and engaged the AUC community, started putting the name of African Diaspora and our vision out there. And then we expanded that into, okay, what is the best way to bridge Africa and its diaspora? And we landed on HBCUs as a convening platform. I was fortunate enough to have then African Union Ambassador to the United States, Arikana Shihombori Kwao, embrace that idea and actually host the launch of ADN's, African Diaspora Nation's HBC Africa Homecoming Initiative in Washington, D.C. at Africa House. And that was a fantastic event. We had the president of Morgan State University attend, representatives from Lincoln University, which had produced James Imankwe Agri, Howard University, which had produced Nnamdi Azikiwe, were the Albany State University. We had a whole bunch of HBCUs represented. We had the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Education, NAFIO's president there, endorsing the platform, a one-stop platform for opportunity exchange between HBCUs and African educational institutions. After that media launch, we did the first HBC Africa Homecoming event in Ghana in 2019. After that, Morgan State University signed an agreement with African University College of Communications and announced that they'll be the first HBCU to start degree programs in Ghana. So from my perspective, it had been impactful, relationships formed. The HBCU Africa Education Coalition was also a spin-off from those initiatives. And I believe that's the HBCU event you attended last year.
Yes, it is, yes.
It started from the HBCU Africa. Beverly was a co-chair of the HBCU Africa Homecoming Initiative. When I pivoted into Amazon, she carried it forward.
Okay.
Right, so I have a connection to that. So Study Abroad, facilitating exchange, it's ongoing.
Yeah.
And this place is designed to also be a landing ground for generally the US community, but especially the HBCU community as it ventures into Africa for opportunity.
So it's great that you have the support of the community, of your friends, your family, as you recently did a soft launch of this place. So what is going to happen here? We've got these two buildings here, like this space here. Talk about what the purpose is.
So this space is the first hub of ADN's latest initiative that we launched. It's called the US Africa STEM and Leadership Advancement Initiative. Under that initiative, we're setting up various hubs, and the point of the hub is to facilitate STEM education, particularly even as we are in an AI and robotics revolution. This place, because we've tried different things when it comes to bridging Africa and its diaspora. But when you look at what can bring about huge change and force multiplication, it's technology, right? So we've landed in this place where we're making a hard pivot into technology. And we wanted to create a space which allows this exchange and collaboration between US educational institutions, actually global educational institutions now, and African educational institutions. So we're looking at trilateral, experiential or project-based experiences in technology from the perspective of actual conceptualization, development and deployment of technology that is responsive to the needs of Africa, right? So we're looking at intersectionalities between Africa and its diaspora, addressing pain points in our respective communities. And we focus on AI and robotics because that allows us to leapfrog, and there's a real opportunity to close the gap. Huge differential in the gap between what is going on in the West and developed countries with AI and what we're doing on the continent. This place will be a space, and it's a space where we actually bring all our global networks and connections in technology. The Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, universities interested in trilateral project-based learning experiences, making that an integral part of their curriculum. This place is where they will land to also impact through workshops and all that. So this place will actually host people. It has co-working spaces. It has demos of actual robots in operation. We have robotic lawn mowers. We have racetracks with autonomous vehicles which are driven by machine learning, trained from models using reinforcement learning and like.
So is this something that's going to be accessible to people of all ages, or is it only for like people who are already in the workforce? Is it for university students? Like, what's the demographic?
So the programming will be from high school and even middle school, all the way up to university students, as well as people in the workforce who want to upskill. So workforce development, middle school, high school, and university students, all within this ecosystem. This area and beyond.
It's a pretty big space you have. I see there's work going on still right now.
Yeah.
I see your family is here supporting.
Yeah.
So it's really good to see that this is, it's like you're in an enclave.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about the buildings. It's also having space out here for community building. We want the culture of this place to be one that engages, whether it's high school students, university students, people in the workforce, that engages them, engages their creativity and innovation, a place that catalyzes their connection to their inner power, which is where creativity and innovation is. And then courageously bringing ideas to life in ways which are responsive to the needs of our society, right? So that's also what you see over here is 2 buildings. So it all be co-working spaces. We have the capacity to actually host people here. And what you're going to be seeing with this yard is actually a place to hang out, have some drinks, network. As you said, a real enclave for building an ecosystem that is truly transnational and which addresses Africa and African diaspora challenges.
So when do you expect this to be fully operational?
Within a month. All right, so we're working on hiring a community manager.
So by the end of February.
Yeah, and even right now, if an entity is available to take up a co-working space, they could start next week. We're ready to go.
And we're in Tema Community 25.
Yeah, we're in Tema Community 25. And our programming will be a mix of in-person as well as virtual. The unique thing about this place is its connection to the Cambridge Innovation Center. ADN's office in the United States is in the Cambridge Innovation Center in Kendall Square.
Just outside Boston.
Yeah, it's in Cambridge, right within Boston, right outside of MIT and Harvard. Right. So that is a strategic move meant to connect this place to the hotbed of innovation in the United States. And I believe that some amazing value is going to come out of that. Networking people here to innovators in the US, to venture capital, and I think it's a great recipe for some amazing stuff.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm sure there's a lot that you've learned throughout the course of your career in gas, oil, tech, innovation, engineering. What are the key things that you're bringing to the table in order for this place to really thrive?
Yeah, I mean, I think foundational is a culture of innovation and invention, and one that respects the dignity of all people. One that appreciates the fact that diversity, equity, and inclusion is vital for innovation. Then secondly, what we bring here is this paradigm of project-based learning, right? Rote learning is a huge issue on the continent. Project-based learning, which allows people to actually deploy their learning and curiosity within the context of real challenges, right? So that approach, I believe, experiential project, that is important. And the transnational aspect of it, right? The opportunity to cross-pollinate ideas across continents, across people of different cultures, the multi-understanding, the global perspective, the caliber of talent that will be sharing and training in this space. The culture and experiences, it will actually be a hybrid of working in a top company like a Chevron, of working in a top company like an Amazon, right? Bringing all that to this space. We're not going to be them, but we're taking the best of all those worlds, the best of all the educational institutions, and capitalizing on generative AI, hanging everything on the NVIDIA Omniverse platform, digital twins, physics-based simulations of reality, large language models. I think what we're going to be doing is something that actually transforms and revolutionizes education because that's just the times we're in. Everything is being disrupted, and education is going to be disrupted, and we're going to be a point of light in that process.
Do you think that AI is going to be something that will revolutionize things in Africa?
Absolutely. And I'm not saying it because I'm going to be a spectator who watches it happen. I'm saying it that because we're going to make it happen. We're going to be on the side of people who make it happen. And AI truly will be deployed in a manner reflective of people, how they think, for good or for bad, right? What we looking at AI is to do is to be a means through which we leapfrog when it comes to education, when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to the creative process. Almost every domain is going to be impacted by that, but it needs a strong ethical and moral framework. And that's something that I care about a lot. Of course, I come from that domain. I come from safety and trust within technology. So, definitely will be a force for good from my perspective. And there'll definitely be people who are trying to do crazy things with AI, as has always been the case with any technology. But legal and regulatory frameworks are important. We've seen that evolving in Europe with the EU AI Act. Our friend Darlington is working with the African Union on the continental AI strategy. We have the US come out with a framework for AI, and the process is going on, the United Nations and all that, right? So we're not here to just be consumers of the outputs that come here. We actually network to those spaces through our alliances and partnerships, and actually influencing what that space looks like.
Do you consider yourself a Pan-Africanist?
Do I consider myself a Pan-African? So I think about Africa.
Yes.
So I'm Pan-African within the context of thinking Africa-wide from an impact perspective. I believe in free trade. I believe in the supply chain, roads, networks being put in place. But now I believe that the ideology of Pan-Africanism has failed. Mm-hmm. It's been a pie in the sky. The idea of one continental government has been a pipe dream for a long time, right? So I believe in a different framework, which I'll disclose
right now?
In another interview.
Okay.
It's called the UFA,
okay,
but that'll be a separate discussion.
All right. Okay. All right.
Right. But I believe that I believe in the use of technology to meet the needs of people within the context of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. If we can have good health, quality education, smart cities, a clean environment, I care more about that ideology because I can actually register and measure its impact on people,
right,
as against this ideology, which frankly, I don't see any progress being made towards continental government. Yes, the trade and economic aspects, it's in the interest of companies, it's interest in governments. It's been
so you believe in the Africa continental free trade?
Fantastic. Yeah. I believe in African continental free trade. That is the real stuff. But the ideology of Pan-Africanism within the context of one government, I don't see it happening because I frankly don't see governments working towards that. It's the realm of rhetoric, just like, we're going to heaven, promising heaven, but look at what is actually happening on the ground. It is the trade, the single continental market, the infrastructure to allow free movement. That is great stuff.
I would love to know what your family thinks about this.
What my family thinks about it.
What you're doing, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. My dad spent a lot of time with the Volta River Authority. when you talk about Ghana's power infrastructure and its extension, the Northern Electrification Department, the Bui Dam. He was the founding executive director of the Bui Dam. So he's been concerned about physical power and lighting, right? When I reflect on what we're doing, connecting the dots, this is about another kind of power. That was about external infrastructure. What we're doing here is about creativity, innovation, engaging your inner power. So I'm also in the power business, but it's about inner power, creativity, innovation, ideas, and bringing it to fruition through technology. So what does my family think about this? It takes some explaining. Sometimes they don't understand why I would expend all this energy on this, but at the end of the day, it's a matter of a call, responding to a call to be a performing generation of Africans who really impact and serve as living waters in the thirsty land. A synthesis of all my experiences, right? So it's a journey, but they seem tangibles, right? It was different when I was talking about this whole Pan-Africanist stuff. It was a pie in the sky back then. But once they start seeing tangibles, buildings, people coming in, training, impact, it becomes easier to understand, right? And now they're being supported. It wasn't always the case. So be prepared. As a leader, be prepared to be misunderstood for long periods of time.
Be on the journey alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a mark of true leadership.
Yeah, being on the journey alone.
Yeah.
So what's next? The next steps for you?
So the next step is getting this to full operational capacity, getting it filled up with students, with people who want to upskill, with innovators and inventors, connecting tech ecosystem in this area to this place. And the next part of it for me is actually launching a startup in stealth mode, an edtech startup, which will be, I'll be sharing more about that later.
Okay.
But African Diaspora Nation will continue to bridge, take maximum advantage of the technological revolution that we're in, and actually apply the technology to solving real problems. So that is what is next. It's doing the hard work and demonstrating impact through the lives who are touched. And like I said, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, being able to point that we made an impact in this space, that space, that space. And for me, on the global stage, supporting the work of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers with their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and bringing more of technology innovation into the African setting. That's what is next.
Okay.
The creation of what I call the ADN man, ADN woman, people as products by virtue of the experience that they go through. Right? That's what's next. Empowered people making impact.
I want to know, you're a son of the soil who moved abroad, and then you moved back to Africa, then you went back to America. Do you see yourself ever coming back with the diaspora, moving back to Ghana, or those who never even lived here and moving to Ghana? Would you ever consider moving back home?
Well, the way where I stand right now is I want to have options, global options. And technology is getting to the point which will make that inconsequential. That's the beauty, all right? So I expect to spend some time in Ghana, some time in Rwanda, some time in the United States, right? It's about, this is where I'll draw on a faith analogy. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. It's about making impact, and I think Africa, right? So it's not just going to be Ghana, but definitely we'll have a home base here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What is one thing you want to be remembered for?
One thing I want to be remembered for is that of an is to be that African who went to the United States and ended up creating a platform which allows innovators and inventors that I've come across, as well as those I'm training, to solve problems and pain points, address pain points at the intersection of Africa and its diaspora. All right, so that's what I want to be remembered for. I want to be remembered as one who created an ecosystem, an educational ecosystem to help people connect with their creativity and innovation, and through that process produce many unicorns, billion-dollar companies, the next Mark Zuckerbergs, the next Jeff Bezos, because I believe they're here.
Yeah.
And I want to be remembered for helping to liberate the creative and innovative energies of these people so that they bring their ideas and solutions to the marketplace, whether in Africa or beyond.
Thank you.
That's what I want to be remembered.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much for watching this episode today. What a wonderful conversation, and this time spent with him, sharing his journey and all of the things that he's doing now and into the future. He's definitely somebody that you want to watch and you want to connect with. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.